Good morning, and welcome back to PILI's annual Pro Bono reception. Today, I'm thrilled and excited to have joining us ABA President Judy Perry Martinez to join me in a discussion about how lawyers can get involved and help during this time through pro bono and legal aid. Judy is not only the president of the American Bar Association, but she is currently of counsel at Simon, Perrigine, Smith, and Redfern, and previously was with the firm from 1982 to 2003 as a partner, member of the governing committee, and commercial litigator. Judy joined Northrop Grumman in 2003, where she would go on to serve as assistant general counsel for litigation, managing litigation for the western half of the country, before becoming vice president and chief compliance officer in 2011. Judy also was named to the company's Diversity and Inclusion Leadership Council. Judy retired from Northrop Grumman in 2015 to become a fellow at the Advanced Leadership Initiative at Harvard, where she spent a year in residence. Following her time at Harvard, she returned to New Orleans to pursue a career in public service and has rejoined SPS&R, where she will continue that work. Judy, thank you so much for joining us. It's a delight to see you. Judy and I go way back in the ABA. It's great to have you join me, my good friend.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I'm delighted to be with you.
Well, let's start off with a question that we've been asking a lot of folks over the course of this week, and that is around the theme that PILI had chosen for this year, defining justice. How do you define justice, Judy?
I think I'd say rightful, fairness, equity, equality, righteousness, and a lot more if we had the time, because I think the concept of justice, Mike, encompasses how we should live and work with each other each and every day. We all are about doing justice, and that's so important to us. So it can take on a different meaning for each of us, but I think at the core of it all is fairness to each other.
And I think that's a great segue to talk a little bit about your history and background, Judy, because I think all of those things that you described as your definition of justice have been at the heart of who you've been as a lawyer and as a leader. Your commitment to public service began decades ago when you and other members of the Louisiana Bar undertook an effort to establish the New Orleans Pro Bono Project, and you served as Distinguished Access to Justice Pro Bono Fellow for Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. Tell us a bit more about your experience with pro bono and why you think doing pro bono is important.
Well, I know when I was a young lawyer and a lot of us came together and realized we needed a pro bono project in New Orleans, that at the core of that effort was making sure that as attorneys we could contribute. There were many of us who wanted to try to make a difference, but often that's so hard unless you have an organization to help you do so. And so the New Orleans Pro Bono Project, now the Pro Bono Project, has lasted all these many years and thrived in our city and beyond. It was really a way for lawyers to be there for those in need. And we saw that and what the work that it could actually do, and thought that this was something that was going to be sustaining, and it certainly has. The New Orleans Pro Bono Project, like the Louisiana Bar and the New Orleans Bar, works so closely with our LSC funded office here, Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. So come full circle, back about 3 or 4 years ago, I was asked to serve in the first class of distinguished pro bono fellows, distinguished fellows for the Southeast Louisiana Legal Services Corporation, and worked with them for a year on projects of importance. In the interim, I think what I can tell you is what I know other attorneys across our country and those that work with your wonderful organization come to realize, that when you contribute through pro bono of any means, or public service really of any means, what that does is give you back so much more than you ever put in, whether it's through the individuals whom you meet, the people you get to work with, the clients who help you understand their struggles and what you can do to make a difference simply by listening. I can tell you whether my work's been in the civil side, or I had a death penalty capital habeas case for 9 years. And I can tell you that each and every one of those instances made me a better lawyer, And I would suggest to you they made me a better person.
So under your leadership this year as ABA president, one of the many things that you've done, this in particular coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, was to launch the ABA Task Force on Legal Needs arising out of that pandemic. Can you tell us a little bit more about the task force and its purpose?
Well, immediately after the first few days of the pandemic hitting so many places across our country, Mike, we realized that we needed to stand up, utilizing the ABA's significant convening power, a place where people could go and gather together who care passionately about serving others. And so what we did was to establish the task force, and I was so pleased when, without hesitancy, when I called upon him, former Legal Services Corporation President Jim Sandman said, absolutely, I will serve as chair. And we brought together the president of the Conference of Chief Justices, the president of the National Center for State Courts, the head of the NLADA, the NDAA, National District Attorneys Association, and so many other organizations, the court administrators, ABA entities, and affiliated organizations from across the country whom we knew wanted to be a part of something bigger than all of us. And that task force has been gathering information, really listing resources together. They have a wonderful, rich website at ABA, at ABA Coronavirus Task Force.org, ABA Coronavirus Task Force.org, where individuals can go, whether attorneys or otherwise, to gain information and insights into what they need in order to be helped through the pandemic as well as to serve others. There are wellness resources there. There are information about how you can contribute to pro bono and otherwise. And there's just a host of resources that are available to ABA members and beyond. And what we know that task force is doing is that it is identifying the legal needs through surveys and other means. It is making recommendations to the American Bar Association about how to address those needs, and then mobilizing attorneys across this country to do pro bono work as needed.
And I was fortunate and grateful to be appointed to that task force by you, Judy, and honored to serve on it. I know that there's been in addition to the website, which has been a really enormous part of the work of the task force, that there's been a group looking at the courts as they start to think about reopening and what that means. There's a group thinking about how pro bono is going to play a part into it. What are the priorities for those groups, and what are you hoping might come out of the work of the task force in the weeks and months to come?
You know, Mike, the fact that we have the National Center for State Courts, the Judicial Division of the American Bar Association, as one group that is looking at how we go back into the courts when they open their physical doors. As you know, the courts were never closed, but they certainly did suspend quite a few of the aspects of operations, and proceedings were put on hold. And so helping the courts, as we in our lawyer roles with the courts, helping them understand how they can assist not only lawyers, but importantly, self-represented litigants who come to the courts each and every day and now are faced with more challenges in bringing their matters before the courts and participating, whether that be the amount of data usage they have in their phones, a lack of internet and broadband in their area, or so much more. And so having those discussions and conversations now, so that courts, when they're fully operational, know that how they can help people as litigants who come before them is critical. The pro bono efforts that are going on within the task force, because of all those who have come to the table of the task force, are significant. And that includes everything from making sure that individuals across the country know about ABA free legal answers, and we can talk about that in a few minutes, as well as knowing about different new tools that are being stood up in order to help people who have been victims of the pandemic, who've suffered through the pandemic, and really are trying to get back on their feet. But we know that they have a long journey as we move through the pandemic and what's ahead.
And before we turn to free legal answers, which of course we at PILI are big fans of, I wanted to spend a moment kind of on that vein, talking a little bit more about a great new site that has been developed thanks to the ABA Young Lawyers Division and Paladin, who have worked on a portal for pro bono work coming out of the pandemic. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
You know, it is one of the most inspiring pieces of work I've seen in a long time, because it was stood up for an immediate need and it's up and operational. And that's just amazing. What I can tell you about it is that it really is a place where legal aid organizations can deliver their needs on a platform and put those forth in order that lawyers who want to help and do pro bono can look by state and sign up in their area for cases that are on and listed on the platform. They can sign up by area of casework. They can sign up in so many different ways about what they want to take on. And that's critically important, because what we're doing is really matching the supply with the demand. We are taking that on front and center through this wonderful work and cooperative venture between Paladin and the ABA Young Lawyers Division.
So we've mentioned Free Legal Answers. Let's talk a little bit about that great site. So this predates the pandemic. This is years in the making, but in some ways made for this moment. The ABA had developed Free Legal Answers to provide a means of providing virtual civil legal help to those in need. Tell us a little bit more about that site and the impetus behind it, and how we've transitioned it during this really challenging time where virtual is, like we're doing right now, the way to meet.
Well, you know, it actually started, Free Legal Answers actually started in Tennessee. And it was lifted, if you will, up in terms of spreading its good work across the country by the ABA, and really has made a difference in 44 states now. It's available, including, of course, as you said, in Illinois. And what it does is allow an attorney sitting at his or her desk or at her home on a sofa to go on to Free Legal Answers, to log on and to see if they have a question that they can look through and scroll through that they want to answer. So it really is for, you know, quick and easy access on the attorney site, but also making sure that people have their answers, their specific questions answered as soon as possible. The interesting part is that there have been over 110,000 questions posted to Free Legal Answers. That's amazing. And what we did after the pandemic, or as the pandemic came upon us, is to ease, if you will, the eligibility requirements of income and otherwise, to make sure that all people who were being struck by the pandemic could get assistance in some way if they met the criteria, the easier criteria. And what we know is that people are going there. They're going there to get the help they need. We're very proud of the fact that its usage is high in your state, Michael, and we want that to continue, because we know that often people don't know when they are facing a problem of basic needs that in fact there is a legal solution there. And what this does is they put their own question in their own words about the challenge that they're facing, and then the lawyer sees that and is able to respond to them and help them out, and perhaps even give them the help they need with the legal solution that will in fact get them beyond where they are and into a place where they can sustain their family, get the help they need with their job or otherwise.
Well, I'm sure when they started it in Tennessee and when the ABA lifted it up, much like PILI, when it took over being the state administrator last August, had no idea what important role this tool would play in helping people in need, and also in bridging the gap from the more populous places in states and those with less lawyer populations where folks don't always have as many places to turn.
You know, Michael, if I can add one thing, when you think about the population of lawyers who do pro bono, it's breathtaking. But then you think about the population of lawyers who say, maybe I just can't take a full case. Maybe that criminal case or that major civil case is something that's more than I can take on. Or maybe it's the retired lawyer or not so active lawyer, or the lawyer at home with small children who says, I can't take on a big pro bono case right now, But this is a way that they can contribute and really make a difference on their terms and feel good about what they're doing.
Our slogan that we use is twofold. You hit on it already. One, it's pro bono from your couch. And two, even one answer can make a difference. And I really do believe that's
perfect.
So let's turn to other things. As we have been talking about this week, it is certainly a celebration of great pro bono, but it's a different time in light of what has been happening recently. And you had, I think earlier this week, sent out through the ABA a video message about the murder of George Floyd and about the issues of racism that we struggle with today as a nation. You said in that video, the ABA stands for justice and fairness. And you went on to say that lawyers have a special responsibility to address the injustices of racism and resulting laws that disproportionately impact people of color. What are some ways that you believe that lawyers can answer that call?
Well, this moment for our country is one that lawyers need to be there for. Lawyers need to be agents of change, and we need to use our skills that we have within us, the compassion that we have within us, but most importantly, the fortitude that is necessary in order for our nation to become something better than we are. And frankly, I believe that lawyers will continue to play a significant role in that regard. Not only because at the heart and soul, at the core of everything we believe in, we know that anti-racism is critical. We know that equality is where we must stand. And all of us, I believe, have become awakened to the pain and suffering of our Black and brown colleagues, of those in our neighborhoods who have suffered at the hands of violence from police and otherwise. And it's time for each and every lawyer in this country to stand and to speak against what we're seeing, and to make sure that we are using our skills and our voices to speak for those who have not been heard. Many have tried to bring to the forefront, and to our attention even, the fact that they have not been treated right, that there's been violence against them for centuries. And we have seen it, and I would suggest to you that many of us have not done what we have in us to change things that need to be changed. It is sad and disheartening that it took the death of George Floyd and others at the hands of the police, the killing of them, Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, to bring us to this awakening. But here we are, and we must act now. We must do what we need to do in order to use our resources, whether it be with regard to changes in policies and laws, whether it be with regard to education of the public, or even within our ranks, within the institutions of law, the courts, the associations, and more, in order to assure that we do justice in this case.
And I'm sure that the ABA, having been involved in it for many years, I know it has not looked at this issue just now for the first time. It's something that through various groups within the ABA, the organization has tried to address. And certainly I know we're redoubling our efforts. What are some of the things that the ABA might be working on or looking to do to specifically as an association, as the Association of America's Lawyers about this issue?
You know, Michael, I have to first say, we've done some extraordinary work on diversity and inclusion and anti-racism, but that is simply not enough. And each of us as individuals and as in institutions need to look within and understand our history as well as what more we must do. And part of the work that we're doing right now is to understand all the policies of the American Bar Association, which are the basis for our speaking out, which are the basis for our lobbying efforts in front of legislatures and agencies. And we're understanding what we have in terms of those policies and where the gaps are. So that this summer, for instance, starting with this summer at the House of Delegates that would have been in Chicago, would now be virtual, that we can bring forth for consideration even more policies and stronger policies and updated policies on issues of criticality for our nation at this time. And the other thing we're doing is to really harvest resources and to make sure that we are gathering from across the ABA the extraordinary work that's done by our sections, divisions, and forums, as well as our standing and special committees in the Center for the Diversity and Inclusion Center of the American Bar Association. So that, again, we can share that information with so many outside of the ABA and lawyers who want to be and are a part of the ABA who make a difference and who will continue to make a difference. But most importantly, we need to use our voices, and we need to make sure that when we're talking about these issues, whether as lawyers on webinars and community meetings, at town halls, or ever even at a dinner table in our homes, that we are helping people understand what justice really means. And that in justice, there is no place for racism and bigotry and hate. In justice, there is no place for violence. And in justice, there's no place for anything else but fairness.
Well, Judy, I've appreciated you being here and being part of this conversation. We've come to just about the end, so I've got one final question for you. What would be your call to action for members of the legal community willing to help those in need in whatever form that need might take?
I think they are really several-fold in terms of calls to actions. But one of the ones I think is most important is helping people understand their rights, whether as protesters or otherwise. I think that's critically important to help them understand how they can go about the work that they need to be done in order to be heard. And I also think it's very important for us to not let another day go by without redoubling our efforts to make sure that people register to vote and that they exercise the right to vote, and protecting that right to vote if it is ever challenged. We lawyers know that business of rights. We lawyers know how to help people to be able to exercise their rights. And we lawyers have to be a part of what is so important to our nation right now, and that is to turn toward justice and leave no one behind.
Well, Judy, I have been so grateful for you joining us today, but also for your friendship over the years. And as I've said to you in many emails as we work together this year, incredibly grateful that you are the leader of the American Bar Association right now. Thank you so much for your generosity in joining us, for your thoughts today, and for being part of PILI's annual Pro Bono celebration.
Well, congratulations to PILI, and thank you for your leadership, Michael. We all know it makes a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. We hope that you've enjoyed the discussion, and we hope that you'll tune in and view tomorrow when we're joined by Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul. And if you weren't able to join us earlier in the week, to check out the videos that have now been archived from Monday and Tuesday as part of our annual Pro Bono celebration. Thanks, everyone, and have a great night.